The Jacksonville Jaguars have an offensive line issue, but I'm going to tell you why you can keep hope alive, I think, here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars, where you can find us on our YouTube page that is called Locked On Jaguars, and you can also find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you check into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. We thank all of our everydayers for joining us here every single day. That's right. That's why we call them everydayers. You can be one too, man. All you got to do is join. Check this out. Here's where we're going to end up. All hope is not lost. I'm going to tell you why the Jags can keep hope alive in the third segment. I think I'm going to be able to get that across to you. I know y'all are real angry. Doug Pederson thinks the offensive line is okay. Every time he's asked, he says they did a nice job. Okay. All right. So we're going to start right there. Jags O-line. Is it as bad as we figured? Yeah, it is. I didn't even ask him the question. I meant to say it is. Jags O-line is as bad as we figured. Because it is. And I want to say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm pacifying the team or being too hard on them at the same time. They've had some room in the running game. Didn't come from Travis Etienne early, but it did come from Tank Bigsby. And even in week one, man, and when Tank ran well and averaged over 6 yards a carry, in the second half, Etienne started to find his legs a little bit. And even on the play where he fumbled when Javon Holland knocked the ball out, I have to also admit that, well, Etienne was going into the end zone for a 13-yard touchdown right up the gut. And then last week, he got loose a couple of times on the outside. He got loose. He scored in the red zone up the gut against Cleveland last week. And then while we didn't see Tank Bigsby, we did see Dearness Johnson. Now, it wasn't clean. He was able to, do some juking. And he was motivated, too, because Cleveland was a team that he played for before he came to the Jags. So all of that's good. All week, though, what I've seen, mostly this week more than last week, I have seen cut-ups from everybody from Brian Baldinger to all the other All-22, all the other tape watchers and the cut-up guys. And we have seen the Jaguars' offensive line look like a hot mess. They look like dominoes. They look like one of those things that I used to watch TV early in the morning with my grandmother. These people would build these things out of dominoes. All you got to do is hit one of them and the rest of them fall down, right? That's kind of how the Jags are looking on some of these reach blocks. And shout out to the former Jag, Tom McManus, for actually putting something out that made me have that terminology available to you, because I was just going to talk about them pulling and all of that, but it's also the reach blocks. And that means you're not blocking the dude that's directly in front of you. You got to take a couple of steps and go get somebody else based on the plan of the play, right? And design of those plays. So while we're criticizing the play calling, sometimes when you look at these All-22s and you look at these cut-ups, and what you see is you understand why the play is called and you understand why the play is designed. But too many times you have offensive linemen, and in this case, the few examples that I saw were Cam Robinson, where he totally whiffs and totally misses. You can understand a little bit when a wide receiver like Gabe Davis doesn't do a real good job blocking a defensive end, but you can almost never really understand how a guy lets a dude run right by him, right? When you're a professional making $16, $17 million a year. And we don't pay attention to also how those one singular blocks or missed blocks can really cause a play to not be right and not work. And it looks like a terrible play call. So there's a flip side of that debate or that discussion that says, well, if you know you have guys out there that can't block, why do you keep calling the plays that you're calling? So then that falls into question with me. what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to continue to just play call around bad players that you're paying a lot of money? Does that make sense to anybody? And what's the logic behind that? And if that's the problem, then the problem isn't really play calling so much as it is depending on people that can't be depended on. So that means you're paying people that you can't depend on. And that's a double-edged sword, especially when it comes to an offensive line, because the only way you fix that is in draft or free agency. You're not fixing that via trade during the season, and you're not going to fix that picking up some dude who's just on somebody's practice squad. It doesn't work like that. Guys that can really, really play at those positions, you have to use priority resources to get them, which the Jaguars have tried to do to a certain extent. I think they should have always done more. So there's a dilemma. And I think that's where a lot of the tug of war between the arguments of people that only want to focus on one thing, the biggest thing, or what they conceive or perceive to be the biggest thing, and that is Press Taylor, Doug Pederson, offensive design, as opposed to really putting it on the onus on who it is, and that is the guys that they're paying to be pros who aren't playing like it. And too many times it's always just one dude. Last year, that dude we all know was, or we thought was, Luke Fortner. The analytics said that it was pretty much Luke Fortner, right? But then you get everybody here this year, everybody gets healthy, all of the players are there, and the same thing continues to happen. It doesn't happen as frequently, and there are times when things do go the way that the Jaguars would want them to go. If you look at the stats, they've been over 120 yards rushing or somewhere around there every single week. And barring a couple of mistakes, these games have not been blowouts. I said early in the year, the Jaguars are going to get blowed out by anybody. For the most part, they're going to be in each and every game. But close losses count as losses. They don't count as close losses, and it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What is preventing them from winning these games? What is preventing them from being on the other side of a close loss? Because even if they won these games, we would still be able to point out these warts, but we would be saying, but there's room for improvement, and we got a little leeway because they're now 1-0 or 2-0 or 1-1 with a close loss, and there's life at the end of the tunnel. It appears, though, that whenever the Jaguars really need it, and we talk about the run, and not only the run, but the protection, like when they absolutely have to have it, like at the end of the Miami game, at the end of the Cleveland game. Once they become one-dimensional, the only reason I believe they're having success in the run game or in the pass game when they actually do have it is because the team doesn't know what they're going to do. Once they become one-dimensional and it's clear that they have to throw or that they're trying to run, teams are able to zero in on them, and they're not able to do it. Good teams can line up with you and everybody else knowing what they're trying to do, and they get it done. You know why I know? Because teams are doing it against Jacksonville. Every single time somebody needs a 1 yard, they go get it. Every single time someone needs to melt the clock down at the end of the game, they're able to do it. They're able to sustain drives. They're able to do it because they trust their offensive line. Now watch this. The Dolphins, their perceived weakness coming into this season was their offensive line. Cleveland coming into this last game, their weakness was the fact that they were playing with a bunch of backups who the week before couldn't block anybody. And all of a sudden, they're able to do it against the Jaguars, whose strength is supposed to be their defensive line and their front seven. Why can't the Jaguars have that same thing go into their favor? I'll tell you. Right here coming up in segment 2. And I don't know why Doug Pederson keeps answering the question, they did a nice job. They did a nice job. I know it's not his job to totally criticize him, but I'm kind of getting tired of that, and I know y'all are too. We'll talk about that in segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. First and foremost, man, we're going to tell you right now about FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute truth, man, and you know it. We've been talking about them forever because they're America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, that's one more week, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And it doesn't end there, because once you get a hold of it, you're going to love it, especially if you're a Jacksonville native, maybe one of our military members that is living somewhere else, and you won't get the game locally. All you got to do, man, if you have a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon game out of market, right? And then if you just have a Google account and a current form of payment, you can take advantage of it and then cancel it anytime. You won't cancel, trust me. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Not being nitpicky. The other day I said something, and I'm going to make sure I clarify that and make sure that I don't seem inconsistent to you. When I tell you that, yeah, one of the things I said was it ain't Doug Pederson's job to come out here and trash his offensive line in front of the media. It's not his job to come. In fact, it's counterintuitive to his job if he were to do that, because he has to believe in those guys. He has to have those guys believe in himself. He has to be the motivator. It's not. He's supposed to try to be trying to extract the most out of those guys so they can go out and play with confidence, not just sometimes, but more consistently than they have been. You're not going to win every play. You're not going to win every rep. The other guys get paid too. They're really good. They were drafted high. You know, you're not going to win them all. And the Jaguars haven't lost them all. There have been times when they have had protection. Trevor was protected very well when he took a couple of deep shots, in one in each game, to Brian Thomas Jr. There were other times when Trevor had a very nice pocket, and sometimes he bails out on that pocket a little bit too early. But I can't blame him for that, because most of the time he's had a reason to bail out. And sometimes what it does, you start, as Sam Darnold said, you start seeing ghosts. And what happens is the bailout seems to be something where he's trying to prevent something worse, like getting further and further behind the sticks. And then there are a lot of people that always say, well, Trevor's a great runner. Why didn't he just run? Just run, just run. And those are the same people that said the Jaguars need to run more instead of pass. And then they run more, and now we're saying we're too conservative. So it's almost as if you can't please everyone. But the problem is everyone continues to kind of like paint over, not the fact that the offensive line isn't as good as you want it to be, but paint over how all of that, how that affects so many other things, that there's no reason to look around and try to find something else to blame, when, quite frankly, you can just blame what the problem is, and that is the offensive line. So Doug Pederson does come out and say a lot. I've heard him on about 3 occasions when asked about the offensive line, be very measured, look the person in the eye and say, I think they're doing a nice job. I think they're doing a nice job. All right, so this is me. This is where I kick in, and that part of me kicks in where I'm going to say, I hear what he's saying, but I'm going to tell you what he's really saying. And this is just me, just my opinion, so y'all bear with me. I think he's saying they're doing the best they can because of who they are. That's it. They are doing the best they can because of who they are. Doing a nice job is relative. If you're doing everything up to your capability and there's nothing more that you can do and nothing more that he expects from you, you are doing a nice job. If you're a C+ offensive lineman and you're given a C+ effort, sometimes you get a C- result because you're going to get resistance. Well, that's the best you can do. I can't expect you to do more than you're capable of doing. The only person that seems to think that they're going to do more than they're capable of doing is Trent Baalke, the guy that picked him. And the guy that doesn't want to go out and get more reinforcements, because that would mean that he would have to admit that he's wrong. And you're never going to do that, right? Or Phil Rauscher, Doug Pederson's little protege. And I say little protege, yeah, I'm being petty when I say little protege, because if he wasn't, anybody else probably would have run him out of town by now. So my thing is, maybe, just maybe, this is either a personnel issue or a coaching issue or both. It's a bad combination that leads to up and down play. You're rolling the dice every time you call a play man with them because you might get it and you might not. You might figure it out and you might not. The team has scored. Listen to me. They've scored 13. They scored 13 last week. And they scored 17 the week before. Technically, they scored 17 in the first half the week before. So in the last 6 quarters, they've only scored 13 points. There's a problem. There's a problem. And the folks are standing up at the podium and they're doing and saying the right things because they don't want to throw people on the bus. And rightfully so, they shouldn't. But I wonder what they're really thinking. I'm not going to tell you that I know what they're thinking. I'm going to tell you what I would be thinking if I was them. And that is, we just ain't good enough. I would just wonder if Shad will walk in there and ask Doug Pederson without this cloud of, and you know what? At this point, I don't even care if Trent Baalke's with him. I don't care if there's a cloud of Trent Baalke. I don't know if Doug even should care whether or not he knows that Shad is going to go back and talk to Trent, and Trent's going to try to explain it. Trevor Lawrence said it best. We suck right now. And if there had to be a lie detector test, or if there had to be extreme honesty, which at this point there should be, because if they keep going like this, you ain't going to have no job, so you might as well tell the truth regardless of whose feelings it hurts. I wish either Doug or Trevor would just say, we can't block people when we need to. We're just not good enough. We are not good enough up front. The question comes, how are you not good enough up front when you had Trevor Lawrence for 4 years and you gave him a contract extension? Are we that arrogant that we're going to depend so much on our ability? And granted, I love people that don't hedge their bets. I do. But you hedge your bets on the unknown. And what I'm talking about is scouting and self-scouting. You have to go overboard when protecting your asset. There are national people. I saw Dominic Foxworth and Bomani Jones saying Trevor ain't lived up to all of that potential. He was this and he was that. And we sitting around waiting for him to get to it. And I'm not saying that Trevor is without fault. But what I am telling you is this: it's kind of hard to live up to all of that when the line play in front of you is so inconsistent. Go look at all the real good quarterbacks and tell me that they have line play that's as inconsistent as Trevor Lawrence. Right now, you'd probably only be able to argue Baltimore. The Chargers had Rashawn Slater, who's probably one of the 5 best offensive tackles in the league. And then if you look at guys under 26, he's probably one of the top 2. And they still go out and get Joe Alt in the draft. And now Joe Alt has joined him as one of the top 2 or 3 offensive tackles under the age of 26, probably with that kid up in Detroit. They just don't settle for just being okay. The same time the Jaguars re-signed Cam Robinson, there's another team in Buffalo that re-signed a guy named Deon Dawkins. In fact, Cam Robinson's contract kind of looked like Deon Dawkins' contract, the initial one anyway. I think Dawkins might have got re-upped since then. Deon Dawkins turned into an all-pro. The same draft where the Jags drafted Anton Harrison, they could have also doubled back and drafted Osiris Torrence, and they refused to do it. Osiris Torrence now is a star on the same line where Deon Dawkins is blocking for, and you're going to see them on Monday night. Yeah, don't get mad. Is there any hope? Maybe I'll answer that for you in segment 3 here on Locked On Jaguars, and I think I'll try to do it. Stick around. It's all about Prize Picks, man. That's right. Prize Picks, they're already today's show sponsor. And now I get a chance to tell you why you need to be going over there hanging out with Prize Picks, man, because they're America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. But there's a difference. You don't have to play against 5 million people or 4,999,000 other people. You just play against the house, because all you're doing is picking more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You get them all right, you win. I'm telling you, man, you're going to win so much money. You're going to feel like an expert at picking more or less. And that's what you should feel like. Prize Picks is the absolute truth. And here's how you play it. You download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 off instantly. Well, get $50 instantly when you play $5. Just $5, bro. That's the code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed, especially with the code LOCKEDONNFL. Download that app and get to it right now, man. Prize Picks, run your game. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, trying to figure out if there's any hope at all. Is there any rest for the weary? And those are the Jaguar fans I'm talking about. But first, I got to let you know, I'm glad you're here with me on Locked On Jaguars, your first listen today. Now, for your second listen, go find your new Locked On NFL with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with me, Tony Wiggins, for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And I know you get them somewhere because you're here. And I appreciate y'all. Y'all been showing out for me. I hope the Jaguars can show out Monday and show off Monday. If they are able to do that, then that would mean that y'all will be happy Monday night and Tuesday morning at the water cooler. Is there a reason to keep hope alive for the Jaguars this season? Sure. Because you've seen it in the past. You've seen them beat Buffalo 2 times when they shouldn't have beat them twice over the last 3 years. You've seen them play Miami very, very tough, and you saw them have some grit and play with a little bit more fire in the second half against Cleveland when things were going bad. And then I think it actually helps that you saw guys like Travis Etienne and you saw guys like Trevor Lawrence get really, really upset the other day when those teams, when they fell short. That means they haven't quit. They haven't give up. I think they're still listening. I think some self-doubt starts to creep in, and I think they realize because a lot of them have been around when things have gone bad and then turned around and go good, and then things have gone good and then turned around and go bad, and then they were able to muster up and go up and beat Houston last year when they really, really needed to. I think they have that fight in them, and I think they have the talent in them to be able to make some big plays. I don't know that they're going to be able to block Buffalo. I think they may have to get a little bit more conservative in their attack. All of these weapons they want to use and show you, they might not be able to do that. They have to find something that works and kind of stick with that one thing and then get that thing going enough to the point where they can kind of trick and fool you. This is to me going to be about the Jaguars manipulating and figuring out a way to get 24 points. If they get 24 points against Buffalo, they can win. Because the defense has given up 20 and 16 points. I can't even say they gave up 18 because they didn't, because that was a safety. So it's 20 and 16 points. They've given up 18 points a game. They have played pretty solid situational football outside of a couple of big plays against Miami and a play or two the other day against Cleveland. I just think the Jaguars do have a little bit of hope. There is a little bit of hope to be had with their effort that they hope to give on Sunday or Monday. But a lot of it's in their mind. A lot of it's in their mind, and a lot of it's in their ability to play call around the fact that their offensive line is what their offensive line is. I'm going to be here Monday with a game preview, the latest news, health information. We're going to break all of that down on Monday, watch the game on Monday night, and then right after that, come right back. And once you come right back, we're going to hit you with a postcast late Monday night. And hopefully that's a postcast that we're going to be talking about them winning the game and not having a loss if they do have a loss, at least I want it to be a close one so we can say that they're almost there. I don't want them to go up there and get blown out, because then that's going to tear the roof off this stuff. And that means I got to come on here and tear the roof off this podcast. But I'll do it because that's what I do here, because it's your team every day. You guys make sure you take care of each other. I'll do the same here on Locked On Jaguars. Until next time, take care.